This is Torah Nation TV from Jerusalem, and we are interviewing the head of Machon Shilo, Rabbi David Bar-Hayim. Shalom, Rabbi Bar-Hayim.
Shalom.
Many people are disturbed by the factionalism and infighting that has come to the fore in the Torah world due to the upcoming elections for Chief Rabbi of Israel. In Torah-based thinking, is there room for different opinions?
Everyone knows the statement of the Talmud Bavli in Tractate Yoma, Daf Tet, where it says that the second Mikdash, the second temple, and the Jewish presence here in Eretz Yisrael was destroyed or severely mauled by the Romans as the result of the great revolt against Roman control, Roman occupation of Eretz Yisrael. And Chazal point out that at that time the Jewish people suffered from something called Sinat Chinam. Sinat Chinam, simply translated, means needless hatred. But a lot of people don't really understand what Sinat Chinam is all about. Some people think that Sinat Chinam is when a person dislikes another person because he did something to them, he made some nasty remark, etc. And therefore this person now has a grudge, bears a grudge against this person, and therefore perhaps speaks Lashon Hara, spreads rumors about him, or what have you. And this is how they understand the concept of Sinat Chinam, needless hatred. That's not true. When a person dislikes another person because of something that person did to him, that's not needless hatred, it's hatred. Or it's dislike, it's animosity, but it's not needless. There's a reason for it. Whether he should respond in that manner is a different question, but there is a basis for that hatred. Sinat Chinam is something very different. The Netziv, Rabbeinu Naftali Tzvi Berlin, Zichron Livracha, the Rosh Yeshiva of the famous Yeshiva in Volozhin, points out in his introduction to his Perush on Chumash Bereshith. His work on the Torah is called Ha'amek Davar. In his introduction to Bereshith, he points out that Sinat Chinam is something very different. Sinat Chinam is when a person hates the other person, another Jew, simply because he belongs to a different group, or he has a different point of view, a different philosophy, a different way of doing things, a different halachic perspective, a different minhag, a different custom. That very fact that this person is different from me, the fact that he does things differently from me, that is my reason for hating and disliking that person. And that, says the Netziv, that is Sinat Chinam. Because what we had at that time in Am Yisrael, and unfortunately we see this today as well, what we had then and what we have today is a very widespread phenomenon of very clear dislike and sometimes outright hatred directed at anyone who holds a different position, holds a different view, a different hashkafa, a different world outlook of Judaism, of how to practice Judaism. And we're not talking here about Reform or Conservative Judaism. We're not talking about another form or strain of Judaism, so-called, not based on Chazal, on the sources of the Halakha, not based on the Talmud or the Mishnah. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about different positions, different philosophies, different customs, different outlooks, based on solid and unassailable Torah sources. Within the world of halakha, there has always been, in the world of Jewish thought, philosophy, there's always been room for different positions. There's always been Beth Shammai and Beth Hillel, there's always been Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Meir, there's always been the Rambam and the Ra'avad, there's always been Rav Kook and the Chazon Ish. All these people represented legitimate positions and understandings within the realm of Torah. That is not to say that they were all equally right at one and the same time about the very same issue, about which they disagreed. That's not reasonable, at least not most of the time. occasionally that's also possible, that both positions are equally reasonable and equally correct. But more often than not, one side is more correct than the other. Nevertheless, both positions are legitimate. Both are possible and flow from a true and sincere understanding of Torah. When people are incapable of accepting that there are other people in the world, other Jews, who are just as dedicated to Torah as they are, but who have a different position, even if they're convinced that that position is wrong, that when they hate that other person, and they want nothing to do with that person because they hold a different view, and they feel themselves at liberty to blacken that person's name, as we have seen recently in the run-up to this imminent election for chief rabbi here in Israel. That one side within the so-called Zionist religious world in Israel found it necessary and proper to blacklist and defame, essentially, a certain rabbi who is one of the candidates for this position, based on wild, baseless claims and insinuations. When it comes down to it, if we ask ourselves, what is this all about? My answer is that this is all about Sinat Chinam. Those particular rabbis who found it necessary to expend so much energy and time opposing this particular candidate for this position, in my view, they did it simply because they cannot bear the thought that this person might become the chief rabbi, even though he holds a different position, a different philosophy, a different view on certain issues, perhaps on many issues. But it cannot be denied that all the positions and all the views and the opinions of this particular rabbi and any other rabbi running for this position are based on Torah. And this is exactly what the Netziv tells us, that Sinat Chinam is when one person or one group looks askance at the other simply because they hold a different view or they act in a different way, they follow a different posek, they follow a different psak halacha, they have a different halachic position. And immediately they begin to see this person as some kind of epikorus or min or tzadoki, to use the terms that Chazal used in their time. And today the favorite terms are to say that someone is a dati light, that is to say, not very serious person when it comes to religion, or to say that he has reform leanings, etc. This is outrageous, and this causes only more sinat hinam and more division, and it leads to nothing good at all. The basis of the Torah is to know that everything that flows from the Torah, all opinions that can be shown to have some place within the realm of Torah, are part of the Torah. We don't always accept all opinions, and very often we have to decide between one opinion and an opposing opinion, because we can't act in accordance with both of them. And we can't always adopt all positions, all philosophies, all outlooks. But these different points of view, these different opinions have a basis, and there is room for these ideas in the world of Torah, and that makes Torah a much more beautiful, much more profound and meaningful system. And it is precisely this kind of behavior which actually turns many people away from Torah, and it's important that people be aware of this. Many people are turned away from Torah, people who otherwise may have entered the world of Torah, and some people who were born into the world of Torah leave it, or are turned off by that world of Torah and become very indifferent towards it, because they see this kind of small-minded and baseless kind of hatred, of dislike, of intolerance toward another position. This has nothing to do with postmodernism. This has nothing to do with moral relativism. I'm not suggesting that one has to accept or announce as a philosophical premise that all positions are equally right, equally true. That's not the case. One can examine different positions and decide that this position, this idea, this opinion is more correct than the other. But that has nothing to do with considering the other opinion to be illegitimate, just as no serious Talmudic scholar would consider the explanation of Rabbeinu Tam as opposed to the explanation of Rashi to be illegitimate. One can either accept it or not accept it. One can think it's reasonable or not so reasonable. But Rabbeinu Tam's position is just as legitimate as Rashi's position, and the Rashba's position is just as legitimate as that of the Ramban, etc. And so it is down to the present day. This is the truth of Torah, and it is a terrible shame and a tragedy, in fact, that there are those who are causing the Torah to be viewed as something which it is not, something which is small, narrow-minded, dark, and monolithic. That is not true, and that is misrepresentation of the Torah.
Thank you, Rabbi Bar-Hayim. A word to our viewers. If you would like to sponsor or dedicate a video interview with Rabbi Bar-Hayim in honor or memory of a loved one, or if you would like to obtain Birkon Nusach Eretz Yisrael, please email us at office@machonshilo.org.